May 5th, 1945. The sun had barely pierced the thick canopy of the Okinawa escarpment. The air was heavy, sticky, with sweat and smoke, permeated by the sharp scent of gunpowder and upturned earth. You can almost feel the freezing wind biting at the exposed skin of soldiers huddled behind jagged rocks, their rifles trembling in muddy hands. Screams ripped through the chaos as Japanese machine gun nests rained fire down on the scattered American ranks below. In the middle of this hellstorm was a young man, Private First Class Desmond T. Doss, a conscientious objector. No rifle in his hands, just a medic's bag strapped to his back. His frame was slight, but inside burned an iron resolve. With each deafening burst of gunfire, he moved closer to the wounded, dragging soaked, broken bodies one by one from the edge of death's door. Shrapnel had already torn through Doss's own body, a mouthful of broken glass and blood clinging to his jaw, but the pain was swallowed beneath his focus. Around him, comrades screamed for retreat. But Doss's mission was clear: save every soldier he could. At one point, pinned down by enemy fire, he fashioned a two-pronged knot in a length of rope, which he used like a lifeline, lowering each gravely wounded man, sometimes weighing almost 150 pounds, down the nearly 350-foot cliff to safety below. 3 times he crawled back up that cliff to save more. The weight of the lives he saved was monumental. 75 souls, a whispered prayer, each a testament to his unparalleled courage, to that steadfast spirit that refused to leave a man behind. But Doss's bravery wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. The men who had bullied him during training, those same men he rescued, would bear witness that his actions saved not just their lives, but their faith in humanity amid the bloodshed. Yet as the bullets zipped past and explosions shook the ground beneath him, there was a quiet but terrifying realization settling in. How many more would fall before this hellish battle ended? And would he make it down the cliff alive for the last time? April 29th, 1945. The 77th Infantry Division moves silently through the dense underbrush near Yureso Mura on Okinawa Island. The jagged topography of Hacksaw Ridge looms ahead a near vertical escarpment, 400 feet high, guarded fiercely by entrenched Japanese forces. Mortar shells explode in the distance, the ground trembling beneath the relentless bombardment. Private First Class Desmond Doss stands at the edge of the ridge unarmed, marked only by the red cross on his helmet and the weight of his medic's bag. The orders come swift: assault and secure the ridge. But within moments, carnage descends. The American lines shatter under a barrage of artillery, mortar, and machine gun fire. Approximately 75 men are wounded, immobilized, scattered across the treacherous slope. Amid the chaos, Doss refuses to retreat. Instead, he plunges headfirst into the maelstrom. Crawling under direct enemy fire, he finds men with shattered limbs, torn flesh, and eyes wide with terror and pain. He removes his helmet, knowing the enemy targets medics. First, he strips away all markings that reveal his role, blending into the deadly landscape. With remarkable calm and singular focus, Doss drags each soldier to the ridge's edge. Here, lowering them down on a rope-supported litter, he employs a knot. He learned back home a two-pronged knot sturdy enough to bear the weight of a man. Each trip up and down the perilous cliff is a battle against time and death. 30, 40, 75 men. He repeats his mission, driven not by orders, but by a faith deeper than bullets. His body bears the scars of his valor. 4 times wounded, shrapnel embedded in his flesh, a sniper's bullet fracturing his left arm. Yet when medical evacuation is offered, he refuses, insisting on staying with his company. The night of May 21st brings another hell. A Japanese grenade explosion shatters his leg, then a compound fracture in his arm. Yet Doss, undeterred, binds a rifle stock to his broken arm and crawls 300 yards over rocky terrain to the aid station. his bravery becomes legend. Fellow soldiers, once skeptical of his pacifism and refusal to bear arms, now bear witness to a living symbol of courage. A man who saved lives without firing a single shot. But beyond the battlefield, how does a man fortified by faith find such strength? And what toll does such relentless courage take when the guns finally fall silent? Night draped itself over the Meta escarpment like a shroud, but there was no real darkness. Only the intermittent white flashes of artillery and the dull orange glow of burning earth. The wind carried the metallic tongue of blood and cordite, mingling with the low moans of the wounded scattered across the shattered plateau. You could almost hear the eerie silence between explosions, those fragile seconds when men held their breath and wondered if they would live to see dawn. Down below, at the base of the cliff, medics and stretcher-bearers worked frantically by lantern light, untying each man that came swinging down on a rope from the black void above. The story spread from mouth to mouth with every new casualty lowered. It's Das. He's still up there. He won't come down. Officers who had already marked the entire company as lost now stared up at the rim of the escarpment, watching for the next silhouette to appear against the chaos of the sky. Up top, Desmond Doss's fingers were raw and blistered from the repeated knotting and untying of that rope. His uniform caked in dried blood, most of it not his own. Every time he eased another man over the edge, he whispered the same simple prayer under his breath, a rhythm that kept him moving when his legs threatened to buckle. Lord, help me get one more. The words were never meant to be heroic. They were a bargain with the darkness, a plea for just a few more minutes of borrowed strength. Shells burst closer now, showering him with dirt and hot shards of metal. One explosion slammed him to the ground, ears ringing, vision swimming. For a moment, the world narrowed to the pounding of his heart and the distant screams of men he had not yet reached. He could have crawled to the nets, climbed down, and no one would have blamed him. But that thought, that quiet invitation to survival, felt like betrayal. So he rolled to his knees, grabbed his bag, and moved toward the next cry for help. On his belly, Das inched through fields of twisted bodies and splintered equipment, feeling his way more than seeing. Sometimes the wounded he reached were already gone, their faces slack, eyes fixed on some horizon far beyond the ridge. For them, he closed lids, crossed hands, and moved on. Then there were the men barely clinging to life, lungs gurgling, hands clutching at him like drowning sailors. He gave morphine when he could, bandaged shattered limbs, then dragged them, inch by inch, back to his improvised lowering point. The cliff itself became an enemy. At the edge, one misstep meant plunging into the jagged darkness below. Mud made the rocks slick, and the weight of each man on the rope threatened to pull him over. Yet he braced his feet, locked his arms, and fed the line through burned, shaking hands. From below, the rescued men could see his silhouette against the explosions above small, alone but unyielding as another broken shape descended toward them. Hours passed. Time lost all meaning. The battle above had largely moved on, but sporadic bursts of gunfire and mortar still snapped through the air. Das's world shrank to a simple, brutal cycle. Find, treat, drag, lower. Each trip back toward the killing ground felt longer, heavier, as if the ridge itself were trying to hold him in place. At one point, he stopped, leaning against a rock, chest heaving. "That's it," his muscles screamed. "There's nothing left." But then, faint through the wind, he heard a raw, ragged voice call out for a medic. He forced himself forward again, half crawling, half sliding through a trench gouged into the earth by artillery. The man he reached had taken shrapnel across his torso. Uniform soaked, lips blue. Das pressed his hands into the wound, feeling the hot, pulsing life beneath his fingers. "You're not dying up here," he murmured, more command than comfort. The soldier's eyes focused on him, and recognition flickered. This was the quiet man from training. the one they'd mocked for praying instead of drinking, for carrying a Bible instead of a rifle. Now, in the ruin of Hacksaw Ridge, he was the only thing between that man and oblivion. By the time the faintest hint of gray appeared on the horizon, signaling the enemy's likely next assault, Doss had lowered dozens of wounded men enough that those below started to lose count. Some said 50, others said 100. He never tried to tally. To him, every face, every voice was singular and immediate. Numbers belonged to reports and history books. Up here, it was just one more life, one more soul, one more man who would see home again. Finally, his own body began to assert its limits. Pain lanced through his leg, where shrapnel had lodged deep in the flesh. His arm throbbed with each movement, the earlier impacts now compounding into a dull agony. Exhaustion wrapped around him like a lead blanket. He knew that if he stayed much longer, he might not be able to climb down at all. Yet as he turned toward the cliff's edge at last, his mind was not on his own survival, but on a single haunting question that refused to let go. Had he truly gotten them all? After the guns fell silent and the medals were awarded, Corporal Desmond Thomas Doss faced a new kind of trial, a war within himself. The extensive wounds he suffered during battles on Guam, Leyte, and especially Okinawa, left him with a shattered left arm and embedded shrapnel that plagued him for years. Diagnosed with tuberculosis contracted during service, he endured painful surgeries that took his left lung and several ribs, sidelining any plans he had for a simple life of carpentry. Despite these physical hardships, Doss remained a survivor. Though his body was weakened and he was declared 90% disabled, his spirit was unbroken. He settled on a small farm in Rising Fawn, Georgia, where he lived quietly with his family, finding solace in the rhythms of rural life and the love of his wife and son. Doss rarely spoke of his wartime experiences. Those closest to him noted his modesty and reluctance to claim heroism for actions that saved at least 75 men. The nickname "Soldier Without a Gun" followed him, a title marking a man who defied the conventions of war, not just by refusing to bear arms, but by embodying bravery and faith against all odds. Though the war's wounds never fully healed physically or emotionally, and despite sudden hearing loss later, attributed to antibiotic treatments, Doss's legacy endured not only in the medal around his neck, but in the countless lives he preserved and inspired. Through struggle and triumph, Desmond Doss showed the world that courage wore many faces, that the truest heroic acts could come unarmed and from the deepest conviction of heart.